So one of the fun things about reading is finding authors that you really like, and then you get to look forward to their new novels like you would an album from a favourite band. And I've had a chance to read a couple of those authors recently. The first of these is Adam Foulds. His previous novel, The Quickening Maze, I absolutely loved and was very well received by the critics. This is his latest, In the Wolf's Mouth, published by Jonathan Capeman, out now. And you never quite know what Foulds is going to write next or where he's going to go. This book is set during the Second World War and focuses on Sicily and takes in the North African campaign as well. There are two main characters, two soldiers, one British, one American. Will Walker is the British officer who we follow as he tries to make a name and a career for himself in the army and really tries to affect the outcome of events. And Ray Marfione is the Italian-American soldier who bears the brunt of the action in the novel, the warfare, and we see what kind of impact that can have on a man. There's also, of course, the Sicilian characters, and the book is bookended by two of these characters in various states of power, and we can see how organised crime was there on Sicily, was cracked down on by the fascist forces, and then the inevitable sense that it will return to Sicily once the fascists have lost their fight. There's lots in there, as you can see, and Foulds, as ever, is a fantastic writer. There is no debate about that. But I found this book to be quite bitty. There are some quite short chapters, and it means that your focus is switching from one to the other, which is fine. It means that it felt to me a bit like I was reading a film. I could sort of see it being made into a film with these very short scenes, but it meant that it didn't sort of satisfy me in the same way that the slightly more lyrical and evocative passages of The Quickening Maze did. As I say, there's no debate about the fact that Foulds can write, but I'm not sure that this book really hit home for me. Enjoyable enough to read at the time, but it hasn't stayed with me much afterwards. And I will still be looking forward to whatever he writes next. But this one didn't quite work for me. Then we move on to By Blood We Live by Glen Duncan. This is the third part in his Werewolf vampire trilogy. For those who don't know Glen Duncan, he's a writer I've read every single one of his books now, and he wrote a lot of very dark and interesting literary fiction before having to make a very commercial decision in his life to write something far more commercially minded in order to get published. I'm not the kind of person who's going to be searching out a werewolf or vampire novel probably ever again, but I've absolutely loved reading this trilogy and was very much looking forward to this third part. Thank you to Knopf in the United States for sending this copy, and it's great. I mean, what's not to like? His writing is fantastic. He is so clever and so smart and witty and funny and dirty and sexy and disgusting and all the rest of it. He's perfectly suited to this kind of material and makes it his own. This is not a werewolf or vampire novel like you will have read before. He really gets into the nitty-gritty, and he gets into the psychology of what it would be like to be a human being who feels compelled to kill another human being every month. I don't think many other writers on this subject really delve into the psychology of it. They're just sort of, it's just all good fun. This third part, because of course there's so much plot to deal with, is perhaps the weakest of the trilogy for me. It's got a lot of stuff to get through, and so therefore it wasn't quite as satisfying for me in the other aspects, like the first two novels have been. The first one about love and loneliness, and the second one about motherhood and family. And this really is all about, well, I suppose the complexities of those relationships as they move on, and about unifying these two very distinct things, which is the werewolves and the vampires, and how these two things might have to come together in order to survive in the modern world. I really would recommend them because they're great fun. And as for what Glen Duncan's going to write next, I have absolutely no idea. There is a possibility, I suppose, that he could carry on writing sort of his own take on genre fiction. I hope he gets a chance to write some more of his full-on dark and dirty literary fiction, because he's a fabulous writer. So there you go. That's those two writers. Who knows what I'll be looking at next? It may well be Knausgard. Tune in later.